Hello, Dr. Walker. How are you?
I am well. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate your time.
No,
And
thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm just very grateful. So thank you.
we are looking forward to hearing about your journey. So let's begin with an introduction. Please tell us about yourself.
Well, I am Dr. Shree Walker. I was born and reared in Los Angeles, California, actually Watts to be more specific. I am straight from the Jordan Down projects, right? It has been a journey. We'll come full circle. I earned a degree in history from Fisk University, a master's in special education from Lipscomb, an EDS in administration supervision from CSU, a doctorate in curriculum instruction. I taught school for a couple years. I was a director, an adjunct professor at Belmont University, Fisk University. I completed the public education leadership project at Harvard University. And recently I moved back to Los Angeles and I am the director of special education and SOPA for Rowland Heights Unified School District. But I'm a product of Los Angeles Unified School District as well. So I attended 92nd Elementary School, Charles Drew Magnet, and I was a transient student. So I went to 4 high schools. Yeah, four high schools. Washington Preparatory High School, San Bernardino High School, Crenshaw High School, and I graduated from Fremont High School. And here I am today. Like I said, I just moved back from Nashville about 9 months ago. And I'm here and serving still LA County, but in Rowland Heights. So the students in that population.
We are so impressed. That is amazing, everything that you have accomplished.
Thank you.
Can you share with us what it was like for you growing up as a young woman in South LA?
It's kind of like tales of two cities, right? Like it was the best of times and it was the worst of times, right? Because you don't know what you don't know. You believe your neighborhood is rich and full of life, right? But at the same time, you understand that you don't have everything you're supposed to have, right? And so, I had friends and school dances and playing double dutch and hopscotch, outside and tetherball. And even though I went to the 4 different schools, because of my mother's financial difficulties, right? Like just constantly moving. Sometimes we lived without gas or electricity, or school wasn't really just a value. So it was a struggle with wanting to actually engage in school, but it became my refuge. And so I often spent a lot of time at Fremont High School living in this 2 different worlds. School was actually where I felt safe and was nurtured, but I was living in this world where it was chaotic, whether it was gangs, drugs, just impoverished neighborhoods, lack of encouragement because of people in my community, their own failures, or my family and their own failures. So it was a contrast. There were good days, but then there were a lot of bad days. But it's what made me who I am today. So it was a combination of nature and being nurtured in that environment that I'm grateful for that experience, although it was harsh, and horrific at times.
How did you cope with the challenges that you were facing as a child and as a teenager?
It just depends. Some days it was escaping by staying at school, participating in every extracurricular activity that I could. Like I was the manager of the football team at Fremont High School, the dance team, the journalism staff. I would help with school dances. I used to journal. I did a lot of exercising. But then there were some days where I slept a lot, like because I was depressed, right, because of my world and my environment. But it was just this, I think, intrinsic motivation to just show up, and even the days that I didn't want to show up, showing up and being around my friends, kind of wielded me to continue to just show up. So whether it was extracurricular activities, resting in my feelings of sadness sometimes, acknowledging that I was feeling depressed, really didn't have the words, but then also engaging with friends and teachers, exercising through being on different sport teams. I played softball. So I was just trying some of everything, so coping for me was trying things and trying to figure out what worked for me to get me through whatever that emotion was at the time.
Were there teachers or anyone in high school that, motivated you and inspired you to push through the circumstances?
Well, see, I didn't tell anyone. No one really knew what was
Mm.
going on with me, right? So I was that kid where, I was compliant. I did what I was supposed to do. I always had a smile on my face. And so no one really knew what was going on at home. I think they probably assumed because of the era and the neighborhood at the time. But there were teachers from Mr. Thompson and Mr. Sidney Butler. But I went to so many different schools. By the time I got to Fremont, I don't remember a lot of teachers' names. Because like I said, I went to school at the time. High school was 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. That was high school for me. So my 10th and 11th grade was split between 4 schools. And so 11th grade spring into my senior years when I attended Fremont High School. So there were a lot of different teachers that I met over the time. And by the time I got to Fremont, thinking now, I want to say Miss Cook maybe was the yearbook teacher, Mary Cook, I think that was her name, maybe. So it was a lot of different people who were there, were passionate about being educators. But because I have so many gaps from going to so many different schools, I can't pinpoint and say it was just this one teacher. I think Fremont as a whole, that community just kind of poured into me as I would allow them to pour into me. And just seeing the teachers being there and believing in the work that they were doing kind of inspired me to keep showing up.
Okay. And when did you realize that you wanted to pursue more than just high school, that you wanted to pursue higher education?
I was 7 years old. Like I was, I was 7 years old. I was that kid that said I wanted to be a teacher. I actually wanted to be a teacher, a police officer, and a lawyer, and go to the military. Those are all the things. And I was a teacher. I got accepted to a police academy, but I realized that I wanted to wear heels every day. So I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. I did go to the Navy for a little bit, but life happened and I didn't complete boot camp. And then lawyer, I'm not a lawyer and don't have a desire to be a lawyer, but I deal with a lot of legal things and cases. But it was at a young age, I knew I wanted to be a teacher. And I didn't know the how. I just knew that I wanted to be a teacher, and school was my refuge. And because of my environment, I was a student that was abused at a young age. And so I escaped, and with escaping, it was I played make believe school all the time, but I didn't have anyone saying go to college. You have to do this. You have to do this. You have to do that. It was just kind of figuring it out. And by the time I got to Fremont, there were people talking about it, but you're still overwhelmed with the how. Who's going to help me with the FAFSA? Who's going to help me with this? Who's going to help me with that? So it seems like it's insurmountable, right? But for me, that desire was just still there. And I graduated from Fisk. I graduated from Fremont. And it wasn't until I was 21. So like, what, 3-4 years after I graduated from high school that I went to college, I was 21, non-traditional student going to Fisk University. So it was a process over time, but I just didn't know the how. And it wasn't one person or one moment. It just started at a young age. And I know not everyone knows at a young age, but it was very at a young age. It was at a young age for me. And I just followed the process. They say you got to go to school. So I said, okay, I'll figure that out when it's time to figure it out.
Very impressive.
Thank
You're
you.
just simply amazing. How did leaving home to college in Tennessee impact your life?
So like 6 months, no, 8 or 9 months prior to going to Tennessee, I was working as a teacher assistant at Fremont High School. So I graduated Fremont, left, started doing some work, like some odd jobs. I did go to junior college for a little bit before going to Nashville to go to Fisk University. And then I applied to Fisk, but I was living in the apartment complex across the street from Locke. And we had a slumlord, and it was about 10 units. And my mom wanted to move from LA back to San Bernardino. And so she left. And I was living in this apartment complex that was dilapidated, but I was working at Fremont. And I used to do my homework by candlelight while killing roaches. And like, no one knew that I was living in this place. And so I met some girls at junior college, moved in with them. They, helped me with psychological safety and helped me get my license and things like that. And so I applied to Fisk. And I was just kind of like overwhelmed with excitement, but also fear, because here it is, I'm finally in this place of security, right? And now I'm going to go into the unknown. I don't have money, didn't have money for a plane ticket. Some woman purchased my plane ticket. To this day, I don't know who she is. I think she worked at Fremont, I'm guessing, I don't know who she is. And I had $100 in my pocket. I had never been on a plane before, didn't know anyone, didn't have a caravan going with me. I got there, and we didn't have Uber at the time, and I had to pick the first taxi. And it was a $20 cab ride from the airport to the school, and I tipped him $5. And I had $75 to my name. And it was, I can't stay here. Something is pulling me to go there. I always said I wanted to be a teacher. I gotta go and see, so it was scary, exciting, overwhelming, fear of failure, fear of succeeding, said buyer's remorse. So it was a lot of emotions, but it was the best decision I made.
You pushed through your fears and you made it happen.
Yeah.
What was it like your first year in college?
So Fisk is a HBCU, it's a historically Black university. And so, as you know, LA is very diverse. But for the first time, I'm on a campus where the majority of the faculty and the students are Black African-American students. So I'm not having to be compared to other students, right? I'm just a student, and I'm not having to question, is it because of my race or anything like that? It is Black excellence, you're challenged. Many of the students there, it was the haves and the have-nots. I mean, parents were, heart surgeons and doctors and this, that, and you got me, a kid who's on welfare, parent was on welfare. And so, because I'm from LA and it was the South, I knew how to navigate, as they would call me. I was a city slicker, right? So I can navigate things like that. I was mature. I was 21 years old at the time, but it was like a clash, because I realized that I had so many gaps, right? I realized that I didn't know basic, I knew survival skills, but just etiquette and how to engage and decorum and things like that. So it was life-changing, right? Which caused me to study, right? Like I had to study twice as hard to fill in those gaps. At the same time, I realized that LA and my upbringing taught me how to engage with people. And then I also realized that I had a lot to learn. And so with being from LA, rule number one is self-preservation, right? At the same time, you learn how to listen with your eyes. So observation was very key to where I was picking up on a lot of skills quickly because I was paying attention as to how to set the table, you know, what to wear, things like that. So it changed the trajectory of my life, but I was scared. I was scared. I was lonely at times because I didn't feel like I belonged there, but I couldn't come back home because I didn't belong back in my environment anymore as well. And so I just remained, no matter how much I was homesick, no matter how much I wanted to, you know, come back, it was I had to remain. And plan A was to get my degree, and plan B was to enforce plan A, period. And so that was the goal. And I stayed until I actually completed that goal.
Yeah, you did it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you share with us your career path and what moved you to head into the field of special education?
So as a young age, I knew that I was going to be a teacher, right? Like I pretended to play school all the time. And while I was attending FISC, I worked at Blockbuster, FedEx, Banana Republic, Sprint, AutoZone, Taco Bell. Like I've had all kinds of jobs because I couldn't call home and ask for money. And so I finally went into substitute teaching. And with being a substitute, it was kind of cool going from one school to another, but then I realized like having to learn kids all over again, I wanted to build relationships. So I looked for placements where I was going to be there for an extended period of time. And this class had students with special needs, not physically, but more so processing delays, learning disabilities, and things like that. And so I believe that if you're a teacher, you should be able to take some content and some information and process through it and be able to teach people in a way that they can understand it. And so because I was creative, because I thought outside of the box, because I have dyslexia and processing delays, I'm a visual learner, average IQ, but I'm very disciplined and I seek to understand first. I'm gifted in being able to connect with the students and build those relationships, but also bridge those gaps. And so that was like 3 or 4 months. And then I looked for another placement at an alternative school. And so I was there for like 5, 6 years at the alternative school where kids were there because of infractions from having a gun at a school or, you know, expelled for various reasons. And they too had learning disabilities or ADHD. And so I took all my skills and applied it to that particular population, was very successful, all the way up to being able to be a professor and actually teaching that to students in education programs. So it was an innate ability because I just had to work so hard in school because I had so many gaps. I was able to take the strategies that I applied to myself and then teach it to other students.
Wow, that's wonderful.
Thank you.
For the young Fremont student who's aspiring higher education and wants to be in this field, what type of careers are available in special education for them?
The sky is the limit. I mean, from teaching to teaching elementary, middle school, high school, being a professor, being a researcher, creating a center, collaborating with certain entities like students with autism, students with Down syndrome, students with learning disabilities, students with dyslexia, emotional intelligence, intellectually disabled, or even students who are gifted, right? So you got to figure out what your passion in that area. You can be a speech pathologist, you can be a school psychologist, you can be an occupational therapist. So the sky is the limit. You can create technology to engage students with special needs. So anything is possible. Many of them may even be thinking of something that's not even in existence to help students with disabilities, whether they're visible disabilities or invisible disabilities. So anything is possible. Anything is possible.
How about for the young student who aspires to become a professor? What does that pathway look like for them? Is that something that, you know, they pick a field like special education and then they have to receive certain, like a doctorate degree to become a professor?
Yes and no. So yes, you have to have a teaching credential. It would be great that you've had some experience in K through 12 experience, or before you get to a university, possibly teaching at a junior college or some type of school where people know that you can actually teach, because you have to have a teaching credential. And the more experiences you have, that will help you when you are that professor teaching on the college or university level. Do you have to have a doctorate? No. However, you can't teach a class higher than the degree you actually have. So if you only have a master's, then you can only teach students in undergrad classes. And then if you want to become like associate professor and things like that, there are certain requirements to move through the ranks of being a professor and becoming tenured. So you have to figure out what that the school requirements are and kind of follow that path. You may be a professor that or someone wants to teach equity and diversity or special education or an area of education, and you got to figure out your niche to be able to pull in those resources and build out that curriculum. Sometimes schools will require you to write papers, research papers. They call it scholarship, where you're actually collecting data and doing studies and become published. So your peers can kind of review your information and help the university as well. So it just depends. No, you don't need a doctorate. Depending on your trajectory, you may need a doctorate. So it's best to just figure out the requirements of the university and how you want to engage within that university.
How does a first-time college student being offered their first professional job negotiate salary?
Well, in the education field, oftentimes it's set. In the education field, when you're going into K-12, it just is. They may say for the first 0 years to 5 years, this is your salary, and that's it. If it's not in the educational realm as far as K through 12, I think you would, when you're filling out the application and they ask you the question about salary, you definitely want to be honest and put in a range, and then when you're asked questions about salary or being offered the job, you may want to ask, is that salary negotiable? And be able to make sure you have the experience, or you've done your research to make sure that salary that you're asking for is aligned with what you can offer, opposed to just feeling entitled because I need to make $50,000 and I'm 22 years old, and it just doesn't, it's not aligned with your experiences or an entry level position. I think you have to be honest with asking that question, in a timely manner. You don't want to just start off by saying, hey, how much is the salary? It's a time and a place as you're going through the interview process to be able to ask those questions, but definitely want to make sure you have the experience and can explain as to why you're asking for this particular salary or this particular range. And then you also want to ask, is there room for bonuses or improvement, and how do you receive pay raises or increases over time? Because they may offer you one salary, entry level salary, but in the next year or 2 or 3, there's room for you to grow and move toward that desired salary.
Thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
What helps you manage your different leadership roles?
Prayer. I think definitely like centering self and understanding that I am here to serve, right, guide, and lead, right? And so with doing that, it is always seeking to understand first, right? Like seeking to understand what's actually going on, asking questions, engaging with people, seeing people as people, and then knowing who I am. So because I wear so many different hats, whether it's leader in my household, leader at school, professor, motivational speaker, author, I'm constantly giving, and people are pulling. And you have to know who you are. You have to know your body, your mind. Have I gotten enough sleep? What am I eating? You got to be able to regulate stuff, because if not, you're going to respond and not in a pleasant way towards people. You're going to be short. You're going to be dismissive. And people will forget what you said, forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And that's Maya Angelou. And so as a leader, you got to know how to engage with people and be able to address their needs, because they're coming to you for you to help them solve a problem, and they want to be heard, they want to be felt, understood, and some type of resolution. And so I can't be all over the place. I can't be pouring from an empty cup. So I think it's very important to know yourself, seek to understand, and see people as people, and understand that people make mistakes. People are all struggling with something in some capacity, and we have to learn how to hold space for them and still hold them accountable. And a lot of that with being a leader, you have to lead by example. People are always watching, but then also understanding that everyone is a leader and giving them the opportunity to serve, guide, and lead as well.
What advice would you give a young person struggling with mental health?
Give yourself permission to feel. Give yourself permission to feel. I think it's very important to be emotionally intelligent. And what I mean by that is oftentimes, especially people from the LA community, Fremont area, school district area, we don't give ourselves permission to feel. It's, I'm strong, I'll be okay. And, crazy people go to therapy, and Black people don't go to therapy, or Mexican people don't go to therapy. Strong, esto no es nada. Like we'll get through it. And it's you're emotionally at a disadvantage, because if your feelings are hurt, or you're tired, or you're emotionally scarred, you're supposed to cry. That's a natural response to when something is bothering you. You're supposed to cry. You should feel some sadness if something is bothering you. So my advice to someone who's struggling with mental health issues, depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, am I enough? Am I too much? What do I have to offer? Survivor's remorse. Give yourself permission to feel. Seek help in some way, whether it's therapist, whether it's through your faith, whether it's through exercising, whether it's through journaling, whether it's through sharing what you're dealing with a trusted friend. Know that you're not alone, and know that you're normal. Like, know that you're normal. We all have scars, but many of us don't share the scars, or how we got the scars, or how we got through the struggle. And what you will find is, as you are sharing, what's going on with you, someone else may be able to share that space with you as well because they experienced it. But just keep showing up, keep showing up, keep showing up, and know that you're worthy, and know that the things that I said, therapist, prayer, exercising, medication, talking to a friend, journaling, one of those things may work today. Tomorrow you may have to try something else. The next day you may have to try something else. Over time, you may be able to string some days together and months together to where it's automatic. You know what to do when you're feeling sad or struggling. You know what? I need to get up and move, or I need to go and meditate, or you know what? I need to sit in this sadness and grieve, and kind of work through it. But just know that every day things are changing, every hour things are changing, and figure out what works for you to get you through a place of internal peace, and just know that you matter and you have purpose. And it may not feel like that today. Trust me, you do matter and you have impact in the people lives that you interact with daily.
Thank you for sharing that. Can you tell us a little bit about your book?
So the book, the title is Shree Walker, and it published in 2018. It's available on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, Audible, and I narrated the book, which was one of the hardest things that I've done in life. It's the invisible side of me. It's written in a non-linear fashion. It's honest, it's raw, my most inner thoughts, and it just takes you through my journey. It's an easy read, but it's a hard read because it's very honest, and I'm just very transparent about my experiences and my internal thoughts. I share how I move through the heartache and the pain. And as you read it, you will feel every emotion possible, but it will move you in a way that will cause what I like to say magical disruption, where you're inspired to become the best version of your true self.
Great. We look forward to reading your book.
Thank you.
Are there any words of wisdom that you want to leave us with? Anything else you would like to share?
Anything is possible. Anything is possible. This is a question I often phrase to people: is who goes through all that hell to be mediocre? Who goes through all that hell to be mediocre? So if you're struggling with something, or you desire to be more than you are now, anything is possible. And it starts with one action every day, one little small action every day. And you just have to convince yourself of the truth. And the truth is anything is possible. Because I'm just a kid from Watts with a doctorate.
Amazing.
Anything is possible.
Resilience.
Resilience, yes, indeed.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, and thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you.